body other than the face itself.
There are, in fact, 4 different types of, what we think of as Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
Very wide, pronounced nose. There was also a very ominous odor.
Phase 1 is to identify opportunities. I walked into a small clearing in less than 10-15 feet away from this enormous creature, and it scared the living hell out of me. Phase 2 is conducting investigations both of witnesses and locations. The size of the thing, it was, 4 or 5 feet across the shoulders. Phase 3 is profiling research areas, what's there, how they move, feeding, things like that. About 8 feet tall, I guessed around 800 pounds. It was massive. I had no idea that anything like that existed. Phase 4 is create an intercept plan. I decided to shoot in the air to see if maybe it would scare it off. Phase 5 is the intercept and resolve the issue phase. It didn't do anything, didn't react, and then I heard a noise from my right rear, and from out behind some brush come another one and walked over by the first one. That's when I decided to do what the dog did. I took off running. Welcome to Witness of the Unknown.
If you want to do this and you live close to an area that's wooded, that has good water resources and game, you're pretty much good to go. But do it slow. Research your own area. Don't, because somebody else went and said that they did something, doesn't mean that they did it. Okay? A lot of people make it so... All right, here we go, first-timers. This is the way I would do it if I were you. You don't want to get started in it the way I did, or even the way Will did, and I'll explain that why in a little bit. Find somewhere in a national forest. State parks have different laws. National forest is there for your use. As long as you keep it clean, nobody will really hassle you, okay? Find somewhere at the end of a national forest road or something like that that leads out away from the people with at least two good water sources close by. And they don't have to be 10 feet away. I mean close by within miles. And in fact, you'd be better off if you're in between them. Set up a camp. Pull off the road far enough that you're not blocking the road. You don't want attention from the Forest Service. And a lot of places you can do this. You can literally pull off a fire or Forest Service road and go hiking in from there, or even camp there. There's concerns about fire and stuff like that, but you got to, again, common sense. Have at least 4, preferably 5 people. Now, the next things I'm going to tell you may seem the opposite of what you would think. Be calm. Don't go out there slinging guns around with headlamps on, banging on everything. If you want to scare everything off, just do it like they do on Not Finding Bigfoot. That show was on for years and they never found anything. All right? That's exactly the way to scare everything off. Set up your little camp, a couple of tents. If you got a little camp trailer or something, pop up one, that's fine. Have the 4 people sit in a circle in the evening. Don't play loud music. Don't drink booze. Don't argue. Don't cuss. Don't make a nuisance of yourselves.
You want to be quiet,
go out,
observe, and listen.
Yes, you just enjoy the fact that you're in nature. And you stay out there for several nights. Now, what I would do when I used to go camping is I would have firearms. And no, you don't have to have big exotic weapons. This whole thing that you got to go out there like I said, looking like Rambo is BS. I had, in fact, as of lately, one of my favorite weapons to take out is just a 30-30. But now I load it with very specific ammo. There's a brand of bullet called Buffalo Bore, and they have a 190 grain bullet for a 30-30. And it delivers over a ton of energy at almost 2,000 feet per second within 100 yards. And for anyone that doesn't know anything about shooting, that's a bucket load. It may just be a 30-30, but it's delivering a huge punch. And that's only in worst case. And the other thing about carrying a 30-30, there is no Fish and Wildlife, no Forest Service person that's ever going to be put on high alert for you having a 30-30. If you go out there with some exotic assault rifle with all this stuff, you want to get them to be in protective mode, I mean, fishing game and things like that, that'll do it.
Oh, yeah, you'll get their
so
attention.
Yep. Well, no, it puts them into, they now have to protect themselves. They're wondering why you're out there armed like that. Because you can't hunt in most places with a 30-round mag.
Right.
Right? So set your chairs up around your fire. Have a couple of those LED lanterns like you use for camping. Keep everything soft. Play some soft, mellow music. Don't go out there playing heavy metal or rap or anything like that. Just calm. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy the woods. Typically, within 2 or 3 times of doing it, if they get used to seeing you in an area, they will come and investigate. And little things will start happening. Rocks on the hood of your vehicle. Pine cones being tossed your direction. The little thing with the rocks is true. Had all that happen. And as long as you stay calm, the first time something happens, don't scream, "Oh my God, we got a rock thrown at us," and everyone jump up and turn on headlamps, because then it's over. Just sit there calmly. And actually, after a period of time, if you go out to the same place, you'll hear them moving around you, and it's a gentle approach.
You need to pretend they're not there.
Yes. You don't want to react to what they're doing. And I've told, I don't even know how many people this, and I know you told them the same thing, Will. We both kind of came to this in different ways, but eventually you'll look off at some point, never hearing it, and you'll see one right at the edge of your firelight.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened. Has it happened to you, Will?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it'll just be standing there. So for first-timers, take it slow and easy. Don't go to any of these big hoomba things and wherever they have them. They have them up here in the Northwest. They have them in, Ohio, Oklahoma.
Oh, these little Bigfoot gatherings. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the first thing that you're going to see is a whole bunch of overreaction. There's always the calm people in the bunch, but there's always the ones that overreact. So for first-timers, just keep it calm, keep it mellow, don't react to them, just almost ignore them and have nice, pleasant conversation going on. And I'm telling you, it's worked more times than it's not. And it's a nice way, because then once you understand what this group is doing, where you're going, then you can start to do a little bit other things and just take it slow.
Now, I would give one word of advice about new people going out, as you don't know, it can be totally unexpected what this particular group of creatures is going to do. They might be very aggressive. And I encourage people not to go out looking for these things, because you could have a violent group and have an extremely bad experience the first time out.
Yep. Well, my first experience was horrible.
Yours was bad, yes.
Yeah. So, and that's true. But if you're not going to listen to advice, then do it with common sense. Always common sense. Not you see, that's the bad thing. I know there's some 38-year-old guy living in mom's spare room who's going to be listening to this thinking, I can go out and do this. And that's exactly what you don't want to do. That's where the one thing that all of these experts online will never tell you, ever, when they go out and have these wild encounters, there is safety in numbers. The more people you have out there, some of these encounters, wild ones that I've heard, they've had 10, 12, 14 people there, not one or two. We used to have a saying, and Will can back this up in the military. 2 is 1 and 1 is none. Mm-hmm. And meaning if you send someone out by themselves and they disappear, you never know what happened.
Yeah.
But if you send 2 out, there's always a chance that someone's going to come back and be able to relay what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that common sense follows through with this. If you get somewhere and it does get bad, calmly pack up your stuff and leave.
People need to remember these things are an apex predator, and they have a nasty attitude a lot of times.
Yes. And I've witnessed it on many occasions, and I know Will has, and I know other people that have. And not just out in the Northwest where we are. I know people in Texas. I know people all in that area in the South. And when they, it kind of comes to that thing that, but I've heard this, and I've heard that. But if you've never spent a month camping out somewhere remote, you can't possibly understand the things that you hear out there at night that aren't these things.
Right.
It's all kinds of other critters and creatures. And so you can't let your mind get ahead of you. And the biggest thing is stay calm.
Yeah.
And as I said before, they know what a gun is. And if you ever get to a point where you feel threatened, I'm going to tell you one of your best friends is the remote starter on your vehicle with the headlights coming on.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's something about that just scares the crap out of these things. And especially if they're close to the vehicle. They will flee right now. I don't know. I don't know if they think it's a ghost or something, but they don't like it. I would hit the remote starter on my truck at times just to put them off when they were getting too close to me. Well, and my truck was a couple hundred yards away.
They think there's more than one person there.
Yeah, and that's it. So it's just funny. And my friend from, well, he's not in Texas, but he's down in that area, wanted me to talk about something else because he listens to some of these shows, and he's experienced this, not as much as you or me. I don't have anywhere near the experience Will does. He's been doing this for a far longer period of time to talk about the aspect of storytelling. And, part of the whole thing with people seeing these, one of the few things happen. And I've heard this, the younger generation, I think, is extremely foolish. I think they think that they have the right to see these things and to go out, and that they think that nothing's going to happen. And this friend of mine sent me the recording. I listened to part of it and shut it off. And the guy's second encounter, I don't know, he said he was like 15 or 20 feet away from the thing. And he wasn't scared. And I can tell you, I have been a very, very short distance away from one. Will has been a very, very short distance away from two. What was your response, Will?
I was scared to death.
Yeah. And I think the only reason why I didn't dirty my diaper is my sphincter was so tight because I'm trying to make light of this, but anyone that tells you that they're not afraid and their feet are just a few yards away from this is lying to you. That, or they're just plain plumb stupid.
Or making the story up.
Yes. Exactly. That was going to be my last one. And so I've had this guy sending me these things and having me listen to them. And there's some great storytellers out there, bar none. I'm not going to name names, but, you know, there's a couple of them down in the South that are very good at it. And now if I'm making some commentary about this, this isn't about their interactions. Mm-hmm. I don't doubt their interactions. The thing that a lot of people are telling me with the storytelling and the fact that, you know, the narrow escapes that these people always seem to get, and, you know, you got to understand they're telling the story after the fact. They're not telling you what happened while when it was going on. And so first of all, people don't want I could tell you, like I said earlier, 6 stories, basically all the same, 3 different outcomes. There were 2 one way, 2 another, 2 another. But if I sat there and told you about each one of them, you would be bored, which is one of the reasons why I don't do it, you know. But when you have people that can't even pull off to the side of the road and relieve themselves without a booger falling out of their butt, you have to stop and pause. Now, I've had friends that have gone out with most of these groups. 2 guys very particular with both of these groups. Mm-hmm. And Will, you were a senior NCO, right, when you were in the military?
Correct.
So was I. So what is it, the first thing that they always teach, every drill sergeant, drill instructor, or company commander always states when they get a new, fresh crop of recruits, I'd rather have someone with no experience than someone with a history of doing things the wrong way.
Sure, they think they know it all.
Yes, they already think that they know it all. And this guy that I've been talking to here lately, he said, what is it that sets you off when you start hearing all of these shows? I said, if the first thing out of their mouth is basically they were born in the woods and raised in the woods, start running. Because what happens is that type of storytelling, I wasn't raised in the woods. I was raised in a farming community, but I have spent years of my life in the forest out west. Years. Not days, not weeks, years. Ever since I was very young. And I was trained by, some professional guides, the old-style professional guides, not the ones that you see now. Mm-hmm. And so I was raised kind of the right way. I didn't have any bad habits, is what I'm getting at. And when people get so confident in their ability, they tend to have bad habits. Every single senior NCO that I ever knew in the military, including myself, would say the same thing. I'd rather them know nothing than have a history of bad habits.
Sure, because they learn things the right way if they don't know anything.
Yes. So you have to take it, like I said, I'm not doubting their abilities. But when they're telling you, what they're telling you is they know more than you do. And that may be in some circumstances, but not others. And after that, as they start moving through their stories, well, I've seen, I don't know how many people now, try to call these, quote, call them in. Mm-hmm. And
it doesn't
sometimes
work.
You hear strange things. Yeah. Sometimes you hear strange things, but you don't know what that strange thing is because it's a hell of a long ways away. You just heard a noise. That doesn't mean it's one of these things.
Or that they're responding to you.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard them make all kinds of strange noises, but they had nothing to do with whether I was out there. Right. And trust me, I tried a couple of times banging on stuff. It didn't do anything.
No, it doesn't
work. So when you listen to these stories, the whole theme of kind of what I've been saying is common sense. Apply it. This guy, the same guy that I've been talking with, it's been a couple months now? Mm-hmm. He's been sending information to me. I literally stopped listening to shows. It must have been 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I can't handle it anymore. You get halfway
you've
through,
caught up to me.
Yeah.
I can't tolerate listening to this stuff.
It's like, I mean, some of them are great storytellers. I mean it. But he sends me this one, and I don't even know who this guy is. This guy had a show somewhere down in the South somewhere, and I think Southwest, or I don't know. I can't even remember the name of it. But one of these famous storytellers is picking one of your, Will, older interviews apart. And it was the guy with the broken down truck.
Okay.
Remember that urinated on one?
Right.
Okay. Well, I vaguely remember it. That's been how long ago, Will?
Oh, geez. 4, 5, 6 years ago, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. And neither do I. A long time ago. So I vaguely remember the story, but this person that, you know, he's another one of those that he knows all. You know, they're the best in the business at it. He goes and starts picking your story apart, or not your interview.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he's telling the guy that's interviewing him was that he ultimately later on got a hold of the guy, and basically that he's the only one that could get to the bottom of the story. You know, and eventually the guy said that he had fruit in the truck, a case of fruit or some crap, but it was his experiences that allowed him to get to the bottom of the story. And I thought about that, and I thought, well, why would you have to go and when you interviewed the guy, you could only work with what he told you, right?
And typically, and that's my style of interviewing. My interviews are unvarnished. I'm not adding things in there. I'm not leading the witness. I'm letting them tell their story as is.
Yes. And you don't start poking and prodding. And I told this guy, I told him, this contact of mine, I told him, disregard it. It's just another one of those to prove that they're better, right?
And some of those people are absolute frauds.
Well, let me show you how easy it is to pick apart someone else's story. I already know as soon as this gets posted, someone's going to start trying to pick it apart, which is fine. Sure. I don't care. You know, it doesn't matter to me. So let's take a look at one of the most famous stories in, well, it's the grandest of the grand. And it's the Beast of LBL.
Mm-hmm.
So let me show you how easy it is to pick apart somebody else's story that they told for years. All right. I don't know if Land Between the Lakes is a big area. I mean, I've been there. I've been there a couple of times now, and it is a very off place. You know, I'm more than willing to give these people credit for stuff they do.
Mm-hmm.
It has a different feel. It does. When you get there, and I don't know if it's because of all the storytelling or the fact that the place looks kind of, I don't know, but this story as it was told, and it's been told for years, is that a family of 4 were killed by a, quote, dog man. Now, I still have problems with it, but now it's like dog men are breeding like Catholic rabbits, right?
Well, and there's no such thing as a dog man.
Yeah. See, you can't go anywhere now without a dog man being there.
Right.
Right.
And there's no such thing.
So,
it's biologically impossible for one.
So this story, as it was told, this is back in the early 80s. I don't remember. I haven't heard it for a very long time. So I'm kind of paraphrasing here, and I'm just trying to prove a point how easy it is to pick something apart. Okay. So LBL is very long. It's a long peninsula, and on the east side you have Lake Barkley. On the west side you have Lake Kentucky, and it's basically a great big circle with this huge plot of land right down the middle. Okay. Now, this area, I don't know, it's like 70 miles long or something like that. I don't remember. I haven't looked at these statistics, so don't quote me on this, people. Well, you were off by 2.2 miles or something. What I'm telling you is it's very big. It's very, very large. All right? And it's a beautiful place. The area all around it. I don't care where you go around it. It's a beautiful place. So his story, family campground, early 80s, gets slaughtered by a dog man in the most horrible of ways. Both, as a daughter, a son, the father and the mother, and they're slaughtered by a dog man, and the dog man carries the daughter off and feeds on her. Okay? Somebody sees the dead guy outside the trailer or motor home or whatever he was in, and goes to the closest town, calls the police, and now everyone comes to the rescue, right? Not only do we have, the local police, they see this horrible slaughter. Now, here's where I'm going to stop and kind of separate the story. I'm not saying that people didn't get killed. It's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that it didn't happen that way. Okay? This may have happened. Something may have killed them. And we all know that people go missing in the forest, far beyond what is said in all these books that are coming out now. Mm. So here's where it separates between what could have happened and what is now being told that happened. So Forest Service or the police get a hold of the local army base. Troops are called in. So if you look at the sheer size of these two lakes that are literally miles and miles long, as the story goes, troops were brought in and they covered the banks of the lakes, right, to make sure that whatever did this couldn't get away. And they had people in boats, so if it got past the people, or I don't remember if they were on the land side or the LBL side, I don't remember. It's been years since I've heard the story. But you can find it. It's not hard to find. And they brought troops in and had them cover the landmass from Lake Barkley to Lake Kentucky, basically, as he said in the story, I do remember this, shoulder to shoulder. Now, in order to do this, we're not talking about 100 troops. We're talking about 3,000 or 4,000 troops to cover all of this area the way it is told. Okay? And it would take several days. So when you look at the story, it's like the area is like 3 times the size or 4 times the size of Manhattan Island. Okay? And so these people are arm in arm, walking all the way up this peninsula. They're all around the outside of the lake. Guys in boats. We're talking thousands of people. Thousands to cover that much area. And they kept it secret. Anyone with an ounce of common sense will tell you that is not possible. That is not possible to have that many people move into an area and try to tell some of those locals around there they didn't see that.
Logistically, it's a big operation.
Well, it's like, how many troops did they use to invade Grenada? It's like that, and that's during the same time frame.
Well, and you think about the amount of vehicles to transport all those people and all the support system. It's a big operation.
Now, granted, what's the name of that fort? It's right down there on the Kentucky-Tennessee. It's right there. It's literally right on the other side of Lake Barkley, about 20 or 30 miles. It's not that the Army base isn't there close by. That's not the point. The point is, how in the world did they get all of these people to do all of this and keep it secret?
Right.
Nobody knows. And the few people that do, it just happens to be this one guy telling the story. out of the very few in the entire chain of everything, it just happens to be him.
Kind of coincidental,
right?
huh?
Yeah, and that's kind of my point. Now, I'll take this another direction. I'm gonna throw a shout out to a guy that did a interview some time back, several months, that did a good job. I had told you, in fact, I think I may have even sent you this link, Will. There was a guy that had and I'm not going to go into the whole incident. There was a guy that had something happen on a lake in Ohio on an island. And this is like, I don't know, a year ago, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah. And it was a very, very bad encounter. And we'll just leave it at that. Someone ended up getting seriously hurt. And the whole thing was, to me, it rang of truth in so many different areas that I know myself. I know for a fact that I haven't never seen anyone be hurt by one of these, but I've almost been hurt several times myself. So this guy that interviewed him, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of that show. Somebody sent me a couple of links, but I listened to those, and it's been months ago. It's another newer show. The guy did a really good job because this gentleman, now this is the downside of seeing one of these things when you're older. The guy was in his 50s. He's an ex-veteran. If I remember right, and don't quote me on this, he was a 2 or 3 time volunteer. For all you civilians, you don't know what that means, but for all of us that have served, it's a pretty big deal. When you're a double or triple volunteer, it's a pretty big deal. It's not for the average guy, okay? And he was 50s. They have this encounter. A relative that's with him gets hurt badly. And then, of course, all the normal stuff that happens after an encounter like that happened. But the guy was so distraught, which I 1,000 times get. It mentally messed him up. And whoever the guy was that did the interview was very good about keeping the guy calm. Because I got to tell you, I know what he felt like. And when you hear the guy's voice, the guy was very, very patient and calm. I'll bet you this guy had, I don't know if anybody out there knows what tachycardia is, but his heart rate was probably 160 or 70 beats a minute. He had something very bad or very embarrassing happen to him during it, and I'm not going to call it out here because I don't think that's appropriate. And then his relative get hurt severely. I mean severely. Hospitalized, the whole 9 yards. But the guy that interviewed him did a good job. But then it's kind of like, this is the good and bad side of the subject. Will understands, I know understand that people that have bad experiences, what it can do. But this poor guy, being an ex-veteran in his 50s, having spent a large amount of time in the forest, or as they say down in the South, in the woods, right? Mm-hmm. You see something like this, and it can almost drive you nuts, completely nuts, because it goes against everything that you've learned over 50-something years of life.
And especially
right?
with no outlet for it.
No. And so the guy did a really good interview. If that gentleman listens to this show, let me tell you something. You did do a good job. My hat's off to you. Damn fine job. One thing that you need to keep in mind when you're talking to people like this, Will's, as I said, he's ex-military. I'm ex-military. There's a lot of us out there. The one thing I think, the big piece of it, I think you may have missed that you need to keep in mind, I don't know if they teach or train that now to people, but it's called target fixation. And this guy had target fixation in spades. When he talked about the blurs of its movement, and he would see it in one spot, and the next minute it was here and the next minute was there. The fact that he wasn't paying attention to his surroundings as an ex-military guy, and especially a double or a triple volunteer, he should have known about target fixation, about keeping 360-degree security when things were going down the toilet. But that's okay. That's one of the things that Will and I have known about for a very long time, and a lot of other people that we work with, is when you hear or see something right in front of you, you always have to maintain that 360 degrees.
You.
Yep, that 360 security. It was beaten into us when we were in the military years and years and years and years ago. But now, see, people have stolen the term, and they now use it for motorcycle riders and truck drivers and, car racers, guys that race cars, race car drivers. They use it for all different kinds of things. But there's two sides of target fixation. There's one, the hazard side, or what they used to teach us, the hazard side, which is, what's this over here? Is it going to cause me harm? Exactly. And the second aspect of it is the fear side. And the fear side is what paralyzes people. And that's the side that's hardest to get out once you've had it happen. I had it happen to me, and it took me a long time to get over that fear side of it. And I can tell you that these things are not a pleasant thing that you can just, in a couple of weekends, going out into the woods, that you can actually learn about them. There is no true experts. If there is, they probably work for a 3-letter agency, not in the public. There are people that are knowledgeable in their areas and what they do, and mine are different from Will's. Will's are different from someone else's. Learn about it in the best way that you can if you're going to do it. My advice, don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it.
Because
everybody
once you get hooked,
it changes people's lives adversely most of the time. I've never seen one a positive experience from somebody diving into this, and the outcome has always been bad.
It changed my life adversely. And
I've seen divorce
I know
commonly.
it changed yours.
People look foolish when they go out doing things. I mean, and it's like a fix, like a drug fix, People get caught up in it. They get kind of the heady experience. Maybe they've... I've known, and I'll give you an example. I mean, and I'm not going to go into it too much, but a guy that I introduced to the subject many years ago, he thought he was an expert after he met Renee DeHinden on one of DeHinden's visits to my home. And it didn't take long before the subject burnt him out, and and that was that. It kind of chews people up and spits them out, and if you can't continue to produce, the subject and the public will leave you behind very quickly. So just from that aspect, I say stay out of it. But also the main reason is the safety issue. Things that I've learned in the past 10 years would raise most people's hair. It changed my outlook dramatically. And I went for many years. A lot
of those things we learned together.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
It was. I spent about 2 weeks in shock thinking about my approach.
I remember that.
So it's a profound thing. It's something. It's you're talking in. It's a very dangerous creature, and their behaviors are changing. It's not like it was 30, 40 years ago. Everybody thinks they can drive out. Maybe they get to see one. To prove it to themselves. I say don't even try it. Don't try it.
Nope.
Because you never get what you want.
Nope. And if you do, you may get more than you bargained for.
Almost certainly.
And let me tell you one other thing. One of the other so-called expert of all experts down there was telling some other horror stories on a show. And this is another one of those that one of my buddies wanted me to bring up, on how many people get killed, some of these horror stories besides LBL. right? You know, people being bent over backwards and stuffed in their trucks, and women being raped on the hoods of their cars, and all of these just when you look at stuff like this, it's just like you said, Will. Eventually, your story has to keep being better.
Exactly. They have to keep one-upping themselves to keep their numbers up, keep people listening. And it's not really what a lot of people want. I mean, you just, like I do, I just plug along, I present interviews from people, let them tell their stories as is. And a lot of people learn from that. I get a lot of responses from people who, in fact, I'm going to post one here shortly on my podcast where the guy had never told anyone. There were a couple ladies, in fact, a couple weeks ago from Alabama who told their story. And it's funny, you know, people make comments on YouTube. Oh, I heard that on this show. It was exactly the same story. Those people never told anyone. They certainly didn't go on a show and tell anyone. It's just baloney that the things people put out there and say.
Well, you know, those are the naysayers. And every one of these groups has their little group of kids that aren't potty trained. So what happens is they go out when they see someone that they don't like or that group doesn't like, they go and do their little shenanigans. And that's happened, unfortunately, forever.
Right.
And like I said, I don't, like the story with LBA, I never said it didn't happen. And it may have happened. What I'm saying is what came after that is completely unbelievable.
Right.
And that many troops traversing that large of an area, the other half of that group, major group, he was telling these stories one night. This was years ago, long time ago. And he was telling all these stories, these horrible, I mean, just one right after another. And those are the stories that are typically, I'm not sure about the lady dragging her mattress to the back of her property to have sex with them.
I doubt
that kind of sounds
highly.
like a Dr. Ketchup story or something like that. So, you know what I'm talking about there.
So, somebody's wild fantasy life or something.
Yeah. And well, I think in the story when they were telling it, she eventually went crazy. Clue people, she was nuts to begin with. So
right.
He's telling all these horror stories, one right after another, and then like a show or two later, and maybe it was even on the same show, somebody asked him, would you ever shoot one of these? He goes, no, I wouldn't have that on my conscience. And I stopped and I thought about that. And I thought, so you want to take people out into the woods, into a dangerous situation, but you wouldn't kill one of these because you wouldn't want it on your conscience.
In order to
but
protect people.
You'll go out and tell all these horror stories. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't, see what I mean? It doesn't add up. And would you go out with someone that wouldn't be willing to defend you?
Oh, hell no. They better be ready to pull the trigger quick.
And, well, and Will was laughing at the time when I was on the phone with him and on the quad. And I can tell you that happened. Will can tell you. I'm a couple of other things, Will. And then I'll let you go. I know we've been talking and rambling for a while here. What do you think about them and the Swain? Or do you want me to tell you what I think?
Yeah, go right ahead first.
All right. So this has been brought up to me like a dozen times in the last year. What does it mean when they sway back and forth? Well, I can't confirm one way or another anything. But let's take a look at...
They're agitated.
Exactly. They're pissed. You're in there.
And that's a typical primate behavior. It happens among other primate species.
It's not even other primates. You can go to YouTube and you can look up bison encounters Yellowstone. Okay? And there are dozens of videos because there's obviously an endless supply of stupid people, right? And they go into Yellowstone thinking that it's a petting zoo. And the first thing that all of these animals do before they get seriously pissed is that head of theirs starts swaying side to side.
It's a behavior that's just prior to them being aggressive.
Yes. Grizzlies do it.
Yeah.
Moose do it. Bull elk do it.
Chimps do it. Gorillas do it. I mean, the list goes on.
You have to be foolish to think that this is anything other. They're telling you right now to get out of my space.
Yeah. It's a warning. Period.
And I've heard so many different things. And then I hear these other crazy things. Well, you know, we've calculated that they eat 4,000 calories to 5,000 calories a day. And
they'd be starving at that level.
Clue, common sense people. If you look at, let's take a Major League NBA player during the season. Some of them consume 4,000 to 6,000 calories a day just to maintain their weight. Now, not all have to do that. And this is where the idiots with the keyboards come in. Well, he said this. That's not what I said. I said a lot of them do. Olympic swimmers. What's his name that got caught cheating on the Tour de France? These guys consume thousands and thousands of calories a day just to maintain a 220 or 240 pound body weight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're 7 foot something, 700 and something pounds
plus,
traveling 20 to 60 miles a day
in rugged terrain,
and you're in rugged terrain with muscles that would dwarf any human on the planet, how in the world did you come up with the calculation of 4,000 to 6,000 or 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day? You're talking 15,000.
See, that's pulling a number out of thin air, and we know that they need a minimum of 15,000 calories.
Yes.
I'm not saying how we know, but we do know that.
A very long time we've known that.
Yes.
And see, this is what I mean. And then I heard another comment from another group of experts. We'd like to know what they eat.
What do you think they're eating? I mean, I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but I mean, all you have to do is you look at all the witness reports over all the years, hundreds of them, and there are many of them in there talking about. The one that always interested me was, you know, these people who were on either horseback or hunting, usually in some form of hunting situation, and they either shot a deer or were about to shoot a deer, and the Sasquatch comes out of the tree line, grabs the deer, and runs off. What do you think they're doing with the deer? They're not protecting it. They're taking it off for lunch.
Yep.
And all you have to do is compare. I saw a YouTube video some time ago where a guy was, and it was unrelated to this subject totally. He was just talking about eating meat as a source of protein versus vegetation, and how much vegetation it would take to equal the smaller amount of protein from an animal, and especially animals with larger brains need a lot more to drive that brain. So if something like these creatures, they have to be a predator, but they will eat other things to supplement that diet. They're opportunists.
They will eat anything they can get their hands on, including us. How's that? There's your answer.
Yeah, that's true.
Anything. Well, what have you found in their scat, Will?
I found all kinds of stuff, including plastic bags from eating garbage. You know, the cellophane bag used in the store where you get vegetables and things to put in there? I found one of those in a pile of scat one time. And we just kind of scratched our heads and had to chuckle. We were like, well, this dude just eats anything.
Okay, on the North Coast, you have those pine trees. I can't remember the official name of them, but they have those itty-bitty little 1-inch pine cones on them.
Right.
Or pine trees.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about, the little 1-inch.
Yeah.
I found theirs in scat.
Oh, yeah, I'm not surprised.
A washcloth.
And you know, those seeds, those pine cone seeds, when they're relatively green, they're a good food source for us too. The seeds in them.
You're now starting to talk like what was that old timer back in the day?
Oh,
Yule Gibbons.
Yule Gibbons, who died of a what did he die of? An ulcer. I thought, boy, it's a good thing I didn't listen to him. But the old timers talked about that you could eat green pine cone seeds. They had a lot of the same property as nuts.
Like, yeah, and there's all kinds of things out there in the forest, and I just want people. You know what? The shows are great, the outlets are great. I'm going to finish up with one last thing, and it's back to the Dogman thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you hate going there. I know you hate it. But I had found an article through a friend of mine who's down Louisiana way. And he had this article. Now, you have to take this with, the article was like 100 years old. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the Native American tribes down in the area. It wasn't one of the big ones, but they were somewhere down in Louisiana or somewhere in there talking about, now this is how far back that these stories go. Okay?
Oh, hundreds of years.
Yes, hundreds and hundreds of years. We all know about the Vikings and LaFleur and all those people that these big encounters. I'm saying when you find the small stuff, college libraries are a great resource. And you find a good state college, you can find all kinds of stuff in the history books. Go to the Native American section, go back to when the Army Corps of Engineers started building things moving west, coming up to the Mississippi and past the Mississippi. There are stories, there are things in those archives. But this one story was this small group of Indians that had started trading with the French. And the French came and, I don't want to do a history lesson thing here, so don't quote me on this. The late 1600s, early 1700s, they started bringing people in to that part of Louisiana for trapping and hunting. And there were a lot of them. Now, according to one group of the natives, said that they didn't have a problems with the wolf men, or their version of what they called man wolf or something like that, until the French arrived. And then they started having a lot of problems. They had known about these, what we're talking about, but these, quote, wolfmen, and then the French called them werewolves, right? But then another tribe of Indians said that was crap, and basically they had been here all along. So I don't know. I don't get into that's what I mean. This is a story that came from over 300 years ago.
Yeah, and what they're talking about was the Type 3 Sasquatch that has that protruding face that would resemble what we would think of as a werewolf.
Yeah, or a gorilla.
To a large extent, yeah. And it's simple misidentification.
But you can find stuff like this. When he sent me this article, I mean, the article was basically in tatters. And it was written in like 1805 or something. Yeah. And it was, you couldn't even read all the print on the page. And he had gotten a copy of it. And I remember thinking, well, what good is this? He goes, his point, and it was an excellent point. He goes, this goes back to the two different points of view.
Yeah.
Right? Which is what you need to have. Will and I both have had people contact us, where we knew immediately that it was BS. And then they want to contact you again to add something else to the story. And then they want to contact you again and contact you again. I just want everybody out there to literally realize that you have to take all of this stuff and apply common sense to it. If it doesn't fit, my stories, have they gotten bigger over the years or smaller?
Smaller, really. as we've picked apart the details.
Yes. As you work through things, I've probably removed 30% of what I thought was these things over the years, at least 30%, if not more. Now, I've added other things after that have confirmed what a lot of the stuff that we're not going to talk about here, where, as you said, it literally shook you to your core.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when you start looking at this, we haven't even touched anything on the subject. I doubt I ever will. I may talk about, you know, bits and pieces of it,
Mm-hmm.
but whenever you discuss something like this, there's some nerdy little kid that's never even seen bear scat that's going to try to pick it apart.
Oh,
They
yeah.
always do.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because you ask them a question and they can't answer it. You can hear their fingers on the keyboard, you know, trying to look up the best response, right? Because they don't know. And it's okay to not know, but don't go out and do something foolish, or better yet, if you want to find a good hobby, I'd choose something else, because this is definitely
It's not a good
adversely
hobby.
affected my...
Yeah,
No.
this is not a good hobby.
It's, you know, I've had so many... I can't. I told him I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to say it. I had a friend of mine go out with the experts a few years ago. My friend's can you say bastard on your show?
Sure.
Okay. He's a sneaky bastard. And if you were to pass him or sit next to him in a diner having lunch, you would never know he was there. But he's an ex-triple volunteer, ex-special forces, and the guy is the most almost dweeby looking, okay? He went out with the so-called experts down in the South several years ago. He won't tell me when or where because he doesn't want to give up the jinx on him, because these people are vicious, right? All of them.
Mm-hmm.
They told him told people they had to put their phones away and no recording devices or none of this crap. He had a pen recorder. You know what a pen recorder is?
Yeah.
Looks like a ballpoint pen,
Right.
but it's got flash memory in it and will record up to an hour or something like that on them. They're very small. Yeah, it's stuffed in his pocket, and recorded the whole first, 48 minutes of when they got to where they were. They never left their truck. For the first 25 minutes of it, all they did was bragging and storytelling. You know, saw this, and I saw this, and I saw this, and I saw this. They started making calls, which weren't too much different from anyone else's. He said it had a little different tail off at the end, but it was not anything that he hadn't heard before down in Texas or other places. And he said they heard a little bit of noise, and then all of a sudden they had to leave because they felt that they were going to be surrounded. He goes, he was never so let down in his life. But everything was hyped up to the point, you know, they heard crashing in the bushes and stuff like that. I heard that 30 yards away from me. And I couldn't leave. And now that's stupid on my part, and don't anybody do it unless you seriously know what you're doing. But, and I don't even do it anymore. It's why I didn't go out this summer very much. Well, that, and there's a lot of way too many forest fires around. So
Sure. Mm-hmm.
that's what I mean. You hear the hyped up stories, and then when you go out with them, how many times have we heard that?
Oh, many times.
We're gonna go out, we're gonna record, we're taking our bionic ears and our parabolic mics and our sphincter inspectors and this, that, and the other, and they come back with nothing. Nothing. But whenever they go out without all their gear, what happens?
Oh, they get a ton of stuff then.
Yeah. Time and time and time again.
Funny how that works, isn't it?
I have heard so many recordings. I wouldn't even get into the recording piece of it. Most people don't even know, they can't even understand what you would have to do to record these things and get it right.
Right.
We've discussed that, right, Will?
Yep, we have.
And I tried it, and it worked. But it's like it's just like one of those other things that my point for coming on today was to tell people there's a level of safety that you have to do this.
Yes.
And that level of safety, very few people know. Very few. And when you hear stories, when you hear mine, you apply your common sense to it. You want to call BS on something, by all means, do it. I don't care. I got thick skin.
And people should be skeptical anyway.
Yes. Don't believe these nonsense things and nonsense claims. They're not gentle. They're not nice. They are the apex predator in their environment, period.
Yes, they are.
Once you go into the woods, they're in charge. And it doesn't matter that you can call your congressman. If one of these things starts chewing on your ass, you're going to be in scat in about 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, you're a done deal.
Yeah. And, wow, it's been a long time since we talked, man. I don't know if I want to do this again for a while.
I was just going to say we'll have to do it again, but...
Oh, we can do it again. We'll have to pick a subject that people don't like to do.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right. Oh, God. Which one do we pick, though?
Well, we'll have to discuss that off the air, but there's so many.
Yeah, you don't want to get too much, do you?
Well, I don't want to give away too much, certainly not, because I don't want people out there putting themselves in danger.
I know. Honestly, this last summer, it's one of the reasons you get to a point where you feel like you're pushing your luck.
Mm-hmm.
And as I told you a while ago, I had to stop and look at everything that I was doing and see if that was the right thing to continue doing, because they are changing.
They are changing.
They are not the way they were 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Their behavior is evolving in accordance with our changing behavior. And our changing behavior is we're stopping from being the apex predator that we are, that put us in the position we're in. And like you said, when there's a vacuum in nature, nature will fill it. And that's the beginning of what's happening now.
There's fewer hunters. There's fewer armed people going into the woods.
There's much less aggressive behavior towards nature on our part.
Yep.
And they're going to take advantage of that.
We haven't even broached on the Sierra Nevada range or up in Washington. And it's like, and the funny thing is, these things act very differently in the different areas.
They do.
There's a place in Northwest California that you and I, well, we'll just leave it at that, that we know about.
Right.
That is so nasty. And I don't know if I'd go in there with any fewer than 5 or 6 guys.
You know, that region has always had very aggressive encounters. You go back and look at the encounter stories back through the 50s and beyond. None of them are friendly.
Yeah.
None of them are friendly.
100% of them across the board are nasty.
And I'll tell you something, too. I've been thinking about, especially lately, even the Patterson-Gimlin film, and I'm not going to go into that, but I think, originally I thought, well, maybe it was that female Sasquatch was reacting because of an infant nearby or a young one nearby. I've changed that recently. There were 2 other ones, larger ones, in the area. I almost wonder if they weren't baiting Patterson and Gilman. It moved off to a few hundred yards and stopped and waited. Bob Titmus found that out. And I almost have to wonder, was it, because it looked back to make sure they were still there, was it trying to draw them into a trap where the other 2 were?
Well, go back to the women's screams. and the laughter.
Yeah.
And we haven't, that's a 4-hour conversation right there, baby.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, when you think about all these different things, it's like that area in Northwest California. And no, it's not just on that Indian reservation.
No.
People just, in fact,
that's big country
I'm
up
going to
there.
let that go.
That's big country
I'm going to
up
let
there.
that go.
Yeah, we can talk about that another time.
But there's another thing, that other area south of Crater Lake.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one of those areas that's just, it's God-forsaken.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people down there. These things are ill-tempered.
Mm-hmm.
They
and they're aggressive.
Yeah, the skull. Remember the skull?
Right.
And, you know, when you start seeing and hearing this stuff, and people can't make...
I think we should actually. I think we should actually do another recording talking about that particular subject.
Baiting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff going on that people don't understand. They talk with missing people and things like that. You know, there's people who've exploited that, but and I won't go into that.
Well,
but
let me just say one thing about the missing people thing, and we've known about that long before the books came out.
Mm-hmm.
There are a hell of a lot more people missing in the mountains, in the wilderness, in the woods than what's in the books. The number is staggering, we'll just leave it at that.
It is, yeah.
And because I'm not going to rain on anybody's parade, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But these things, these topics, if I wanted to come up with my own, well, what do they call that when they go after a serial killer? They come up with a set of, you know, how he acts, what he does.
Oh, right, right.
I'm having a brain fart.
The profile.
Yeah. I could create my own profile for these things.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah, we could, definitely.
In this area, they're going to do this, and I can find whatever story I want to match it. That's how easy it is.
There are lots of accounts.
That's like saying, well, there was a book written a long time ago by the same guy about the Hoopa Reservation and Bigfoot and Sasquatch that they never called them apes. I remember, I don't even know how many emails and text messages and stuff I sent to people surrounding him. The Native Americans didn't know what apes were until we taught them.
Correct.
What an ape was.
Correct.
So why was it, how would they come up calling it, that's why they called it hairy man or the devil or all these other, they didn't know what apes were.
Exactly.
Or elephants or, God.
Yeah, they'd never been exposed to those things.
No, it's common sense. So they're going to use the same name that they've used for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to change it for us.
No.
That's what I mean. You can go into any little part of this subject and find stuff that is kind of scary, actually.
It's very scary.
And, well, maybe that's a good place to cut off. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
offline,
we'll discuss it, and we'll do another recording. That's some very interesting things to talk about. And it goes in with the safety part that people need to understand some of that and why it's not a good idea to go chasing out after these things.
Well, nothing's good is ever going to happen from it.
No.
And I know you've gotten yourself into hot water. I've gotten myself into hot water several times. And I won't even go into them following me home.
Right.
So, and yes, they will do that, people. If you live close to where you're doing research, they will follow you home. And don't think that they can't. I don't mean like down the roadside. It may take them a month, but they'll figure out where you're at. Especially if you do something stupid like I did, taking the same road out to an area. So, well, it was great talking to you, Will.
Good talking to you as always, Lee. We'll chat, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next then.
Yeah. You staying busy?
Always busy.
Oh, did you hear about... I've got to tell you something before we get off here.
Okay.
Did you hear about that idiot in Yellowstone a month ago?
I heard something.
The family, Asian guy wanted bear repellent, went into the store,
Mm-hmm.
and he thought it was like mosquito repellent, and he sprayed pepper spray all over his family, their arms.
Well, I bet that was a fun experience for the family.
What was it Forrest Gump used to say? Stupid is as stupid does. How in the world? Oh, I got to leave it there, man.
See, that goes back to
let's
researching
set up
what you're
something
doing.
to talk.
You know? Yeah,
Yeah.
great talk.
And we'll talk soon, man.
All right. Well, you take care, and we will chat again soon.
All right. Bye.
All right. Bye now. Thanks, everyone, for joining me this week. Be sure to tune in again next week as we explore another account from a witness of the unknown.